Welcome back. We're still talking about the social protection program that the country have been effecting. And of course, Dr. Hisham, we were talking about the different initiatives that were taken by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Nobody before he came into office could ever believe that only a simple initiative would save the lives of people with liver disease, virus C, and end it, eradicated entirely from the face of Egypt.
Sure.
And it has been there for years and years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And nobody else also would thought that a simple initiative would end breast cancer, for example, or I mean, lessen it.
Well, increase at least the awareness.
The awareness,
Yeah.
of course. And other initiatives like that. Very brilliant, I mean, very thoughtful and very successful and quick. But also, that was on the health level. There were also other initiatives, very thoughtful initiatives and smart ones that targeted other very weak areas like the food security, for example. We have seen that national, sectors in society have worked very hard to provide some food products or some, nutritional products, very important for kids and for families and for women and all that, through programs, similar programs like that. And very important sectors, in the government, like the Ministry of Interior, and also the armed forces also. Also the, the agricultural products that are done by the armed forces in order, or the agricultural programs, let's call it a program, or projects that are done by the armed forces have been on for almost 7 years now. How far have it succeeded in assisting the gap that is affected according not to crisis in Egypt but international crisis that has been there ever since the COVID and continued and escalated after the military confrontation between Russia and Ukraine.
Sure.
So
food security is essential. A nation that doesn't grow its own food is quite a weak nation. We have always been an agriculture nation. We grow, produce crops and others forever. And our soil is one of the best, if not the best in the world, for reasons we all know. The national services sector, which is run by the military, as you mentioned, is quite substantial. And you're talking about food and agriculture. We have cultivated hundreds of thousands of acres in the
the
desert.
1.5 million Fadan.
There are quite a few sectors. The protected agriculture, I visited one of them the other day. The protected agriculture company, the National Protected Cultivation Company, NPCP, is quite a substantial operation. I've been there. There are various sectors, they call them, around the country with quite substantial production, and you can go to Labur and see the huge amount of production, which has never happened before. This particular sector, the protected cultivated agriculture, is using state-of-the-art labs to control quality. They bring in seeds at very high level of quality from all over the world. They have some of the best agricultural engineers and PhDs and so on to manage the process. Our production of produce, green produce, from strawberry to tomato, cucumber, capsicum and the others, are exported. And they're exported to key markets around the world. Some of them actually rent our cultivated or protected cultivations and grow their crops and then export it. So there are so many different scenarios in terms of food security. We had the crisis with the wheat because of the war in Ukraine and Russia. Everybody has it. We are one of the largest importers of wheat in the world. But however, we grow wheat. We grow around 60 or 70% of what we consume. Or it's the other way around, 30 and 70. We import 70. So the government has immediately launched programs to increase the quantity and enhance the quality of the wheat that you grow. And the same thing applies to rice and maize and corn and so on. All the grains that is very badly affected by the war in Ukraine and Russia. We're not the only one, but in terms of contingency, I mean, I'll just ask you a small question. Have you gone to the bakery at any point and didn't find any bread?
Of course not.
It never happened. The price has gone higher, the size maybe gone smaller, it's still there. I think it's up to us as a population, and I always say that, to really, really try to rationalize our consumption to our means. We are extremely
because we in the Middle East, the idea of rationalizing our consumption is not there at all.
One day we have to do it. So we better do it by choice.
We go to the supermarket and we shop all what we can.
I think we should do it by choice rather than by necessity. And it will happen eventually. We have to live to our means. I lived in...
And maybe this is one of the main problems.
Can I tell you a funny story? I was invited to my boss's boss house in a country, in New Zealand. And many, many years ago. And I was invited to dinner. And I spent an hour commuting, going to the house, beautiful house, and so on. And I'm an expatriate, somebody who coming from Middle East to have dinner. What was the dinner? Soup.
Very small portions.
Soup and salad. It's not. There's no portions. It's soup, vegetable soup, and salad. That's the dinner for a guest. Imagine what kind of food budget these guys have. And they're fine. They're not. It's not a starving nation or anything. It's just that this is the right thing. So if you spend 70% of your income on food and 30% on healthcare because you have to treat the diseases you got because you eat too much, that is not reasonable. And you cannot do that and then ask for government help. It doesn't work.
Of course. But also talking about the, you talked about relevancy between projects, between economic projects, and also its impact over social protection also programs. I mean, the infrastructural projects, for example, the monorail project, I mean,
transport infrastructure,
the bridges I mean, social or the network that have covered all Egypt, the infrastructural network that have covered all Egypt is also one source of job opportunities.
Of course, I mean, infrastructure is quite critical.
It's a social protection program in its own right.
Absolutely. It creates a lot of jobs. It helps the economy one way or the other.
The housing projects.
The ports.
The new Alamein city.
Yes.
The new administration capital.
Yeah.
All of that are considered like social
who are building
programs.
these? It's Egyptian families. It's skilled, highly skilled, unskilled labor. Whether it's
there is a job and opportunity for everyone.
Of course, of course. If you're active enough, if you're looking for a job, there is an abundance of job. We have 5 million refugees in Egypt, and they're all working.
So we're not only providing jobs for Egyptians,
we do have
but also for the incomers.
You and I were talking before the program about people need to go out there and actively help themselves and participate. But you have to help. If you're reluctant to help yourself, don't ask for anybody else to help you. That is maybe being a bit harsh or cruel, but that's a reality. Let me talk to you about SMEs and entrepreneurs in Egypt. SME support has gone through phases in terms of support. At the moment, the criteria and the support is at a phase where eligibility can be a challenge because of the economic situation, but many SMEs have taken advantage of programs provided by whether it's the official financial system, the banks, or by the private sector. The more important part of this is, we talked about poverty alleviation and so on. Let's talk about business development opportunities, because eventually private sector is the key to any economic growth. Entrepreneurs, people with good ideas, basically young people with good ideas, people who have made the Silicon Valley what it is. We have plenty of those. We have huge success stories. We need to talk about this. The fintech or financial technologies, things like Fowry and the like, and Instapay and all those programs. These have been funded by Silicon Valley venture funds, as well as Egyptian-based venture capital funds, and the Gulf. Many examples of young Egyptian people who have created very successful entrepreneurship environment. And I mean, I don't know if a lot of people know that, but many banks have specific venture capital funds to support such ideas. And it's not difficult to have access. I'm talking to young people who want to develop that particular talent or knowledge. It's not difficult to have access to funding if you have the right idea, and there's so many examples of successful Egyptians who have developed ideas, found funding, succeeded, sold or listed their companies, and exited and went to the next one, whether it's in Egypt or overseas.
So these are also new ideas that were taken also by Egypt to be able to facilitate lives for the low-income bracket.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, Dr. Hisham, we have ran out of time, but we're not going to leave you unless on a promise that we could continue with this very important file on many other facets and fronts, hopefully, inshallah. Dr. Hisham Abdel Salam, Economic Development Advisor, you are social, you are an Economic Development Advisor. We'd like to thank you so much. We really were delighted to have you here in our program.
Thank you.
Our pleasure, and I guess this would bring us to the end of this edition of Windows and Current Affairs. Many thanks to all of you. Until we see you again next week, that's a goodbye.